welcome everyone. So today we are here for the Ask the Expert session on Gain Agility with an integrated data platform. Today I have three of the experts with me on the stage, Victoria, Richard, and Andy. So before we start the session and start our discussion, so what we are going to expect in this session is more around we have certain topics where you can ask us different questions, and then all of the experts will choose the questions based on their expertise and they'll try to answer your questions. And we'll start with the team introductions. So those who don't know me, my name is Pragati Jain. I'm a data platform MVP and I'm currently working as a senior consultant at Avanade here in London. Victoria.
Hi, I'm Victoria Holt. I'm an enterprise data architect and I work with Coeo.
I'm Richard Conway. I am the CEO of ElastiCloud.
I'm Andy Cross. I'm the CEO of Intelligent Spaces.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, we have got experts from different areas today here. So how you guys can engage today is like in the Teams chat, you can type in your questions and we'll take up your questions and we'll try to answer them. And once the question will approve, once the questions are approved, they'll appear on the chat. The other thing is like this session is recorded, so we expect everyone to follow a code of conduct, which is the Microsoft Code of Conduct. And I'll not be going through it because I'm sure everyone is aware of it. So not waiting, Victoria, over to you.
Hi, so we're here to talk about how you can accelerate innovation with application and integrated data platform. So as we're all aware of yesterday, hopefully people had a chance to watch the keynote yesterday where they were talking about the Microsoft Intelligent Platform. And that had lots of amazing things, bringing together lots of technologies to make it easier with a fully integrated platform. So thinking about the base of this technology and things, data governance and Microsoft Purview are absolute key base level foundation areas, which sort of take us to that level of having a great understanding of what data estates we've got, understanding that level of security that's required within those sort of applications, how data is sort of classified, and being able to get that up to date sort of like lineage of a data application. So without us being able to have this information, it's really difficult to help us accelerate innovation, moving into sort of our advanced analytics sort of side of things, and all the old Power BI reporting to give us to tell that story and things like that. So it's a really important sort of base level as to where we kind of need to take that sort of first step in our accelerating that platform, and sort of moving on from sort of like that data governance side of things and understanding our business use cases and things like that. We start then thinking about sort of like Synapse and Databricks for helping all those sort of pipeline sort of capabilities and things. I was wondering, like, Richard, what do you kind of think about that sort of using Synapse to help sort of like move that platforms forward with sort of that innovation that's brought with that?
So I think if we go back to the tenets of what Microsoft were trying to design with Synapse is to try and prevent a whole load of siloed tooling. So if we look at data from a very, very holistic perspective, we begin to understand that you need loads of different skills to do, all of the things that Victoria's talking about and a whole load of stuff that we're going to talk about in the next 20-25 minutes. But they don't really exist under one framework. And so the original intent of Synapse was to bring all of this stuff together because it's quite hard to do separately. It's quite hard to maintain. You end up with divisions of labor as well. And I think as data professionals, right, we are more and more is put on us every single day, right? We have to do ETLs. We also now have to do governance. We have to understand storage models. We have to understand compute models. So at the very least, being able to do this in one tool is quite a neat idea. Whether or not it lives up to its expectation now, right, is a different matter. But the premise of it is a really, really good premise.
So we have our first question from the audience: Delta Lake / tables versus SQL databases / tables. Which is the future for query and report creation?
I mean, personally, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that you need both of them. If we go back to the fundamental of the Microsoft design patterns with the modern cloud data warehouse, right? It states all of the different parts of the data platform. You need to have a piece to do your data acquisition. You need to be able to pipeline data, and you need to understand how to land, stage, and then curate this into a model. You still need a model to serve, right? Whatever vendors tell you, the fastest way to serve back and the best level of connectivity to self-service BI tools is always going to be SQL analysis services through analytical models. I think the power that Delta Lake gives you is it gives you the ability to merge data as it comes through that data lake lifecycle, so that you've basically got a living copy of that data to put into a data warehouse or a database. So that we've relegated to a last mile compute, but we always serve from that. What would you say to that, Andy?
Yeah, I think that if you're completely in control of your data, then you can kind of minimize some parts of the more flexible compute element of that pipeline. But we typically see that when we're working with customers in the real world, that the data is just appalling in every opportunity. It's got to be appalling, and it loves to surprise you by how appalling it can be. And if you've got something that is brittle when it comes to poor data quality, then you've got significant problems. So having flexibility at the appropriate points is really powerful, but it can also be a lot of work and a lot of manual effort to try and get around a lot of the sort of issues that you do see in data quality. And one of the things that's maybe a good question to throw back around governance is around how do you guarantee that data quality, right? And how do you get flags and alerts coming through so that when something lands and drops, and you can actually go, well, I know what's going to break now. I know that this file that's come in, what was missing, it means that all these pipelines are going to fail. And so I know that ultimately my reporting tier isn't going to have the data available to it that I need to serve to my CEO. So, how far matured is that part of the platform to sort of have baked in expectations of what should be there and the quality and the grade of it, so that I know forwards from a provenance route what the problems are likely to be?
I mean, I think that's really important, isn't it? Because you can't sort of like get that full sort of like innovation on the business side of things without actually having a lot of work to know where you are with that data quality, and even having those metrics to measure it and monitor it and things like that. But yeah, building that in those sort of like ETL pipelines at the beginning or ELT pipelines is like massively important for innovation, because then we can sort of like move that sort of forward and things, and we can build that sort of straight into those sort of like Power BI sort of like stories and things like that, can't we, as well? So I mean, how do you sort of see like Power BI sort of helping with that sort of like innovation side of the data platform?
So basically, I think Power BI is like quite a very strong BI tool. I mean, once you consume data from like as we talked about as your data lake or data warehouse, we can easily consume data. And obviously, Power BI has got a strong capability of building models on top of that, which can be really flexible for the developers who are actually developing report. And once that model is in place, we can really create nice insights and do that kind of storytelling at the high level, which the management requires or CEO requires. So I think Power BI is really flexible in that way, because it can really connect to different kind of data resources, and it really provide that kind of flexibility while you're developing a report or creating your data model in the right way. So yeah, I think Power BI is the route to go. I mean, so that's what I think. That's the way it provides innovation.
So do we think about any particular tools are helping us with the development side to provide that sort of like innovation in these platforms? Have you got any particular tools that are your favorite to help sort of move us forward?
Oh, I've got so many biases. So many biases. I don't know where to start. But I think we've covered this quite a lot today, and we need to be using the right tools for the right job. And I think especially in the data space, something new is released every year, and you're moving into this field, and you need to work out what to use. Even looking back at the history of big data, when I started, we started together looking at the technical access preview of Hadoop on Azure, and trying to decide between all of the different flavors of Hadoop was really, really impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And all of the vendors have got slightly different features and slightly different nuances to them that they'll lock you in, move you away from like the core open source platform, but you know, I find it's really important to understand that you start with the list of capabilities that you need. So it's a very, very architectural thought process, because if you go down the wrong route for a data platform piece, it's really, really hard to back out again. I just to throw my bias at this, which was in my my initial slide CV. I've had a lot of success with Azure Data Explorer over the last couple of years. I very much see it. They used to call Spark the Swiss Army knife of big data, and there are things that Spark didn't do. For example, you couldn't stream data very, very easily. You could micro batch. It was a bit of an annoyance to do this. You didn't have all of the nice parts that you have now in Databricks, like structured streaming. It was streaming without the structure, and it was a lot of work. So I think for me, I look at ADX as a pure, that's Azure Data Explorer, the acronym. I look at this as a pure platform piece, and you can ingest, you can transform, you can create your own pipelines. You have Custo query language, which has got a whole load of features and functions in it, which go from everything from machine learning to time series. So you can build dashboards in it, at least operational dashboards. So for pretty much 95% of the use cases that you have, you can drive Lambda and Kappa architectures through it very, very easily without anything else. So that's my bias. If I'm choosing one tool, it's that.
If I'm going to jump on bias as well, I'm at it. You probably won't hear a huge amount about my favorite thing in the whole world, because it's slightly to the side, and it came from the problem domain of IoT, the Internet of Things. And that tool that I really, really like and I spend every day working with is Azure Digital Twins. And Azure Digital Twins is a graph database fundamentally. You never hear much about graph databases, but they are also pretty cool things. They make the relationships between objects inside the database as important as the data that the objects themselves hold. And we're not talking about relationships as like foreign keys onto other tables. These are like multi-level traversable relationships that helps you find like how things are related in a number of degrees of separation. And when you're in a physical space and you're trying to describe, in this room here where we're stood, we have like cameras, we've got screens, we've got desks, we have workstations, we've got power sockets, we've got lights, we've got air conditioning units and projectors. All of these things are described in a graph database by their relationship to this room, but also the relationship to the level of the building they're on, and also maybe to the power circuit that they're connected to, maybe the manufacturer of those things as well. These are all relationships that you can have very easily, and you can move them around and traverse through all of those things. And what that does in an IoT scenario, when you start connecting telemetry from any of those individual points, is it means you start breaking down silos. Because the biggest problem with IoT, and the reason that so many IoT projects fail to live up to expectations, is that when you buy a sensor, you hook yourself into a management contract with the sensor manufacturers, who then go and try and sell you a subscription to their BI tool of choice, which is their own website that you've got to log into. And then so you've got maybe a energy use dashboard come from one manufacturer, an air quality dashboard come from another manufacturer. And if you want to work out what's going on in that room just with those two data points, you have to actually open up two different web portals and sit there and eyeball those two things. And you have to eyeball them, because if you want to do that like a data professional, you've got to export data from here, you've got to export data from here, you have to import it into some kind of common platform, you've got a whole bunch of integration work to do in the middle. And people are going to charge you money to do some of that stuff along the way, whether it's the consultants that do the integration or whether it's the people who are doing the export. It becomes really expensive. And then what most people experience in IoT is, hey, I've got these sensors, we've installed them, and I can't get the data to make sense. I can't work out what's happening here compared to the floor above or the floor below or the other building down the road. I can't work it out because it's too much manual analysis required. So it fails because of the silos that the data resides in. And ADT, Azure Digital Twin, as a graph database, is designed to fix that problem, to say that if you describe your space in this database, you can then say, hey, because they're all related to that, we can start doing an analytics over things that are related geospatially. So find me the average temperature and the average energy use for this floor, or for an individual room, or where the person who maintains it is Bob, because we think Bob's not doing his job very well, or something like that. And we can start doing really interesting queries, and we can traverse that graph to come up with real great analytics. And what it does as a graph database is break down those silos, and then allows us to really find the links between things in the real world and then search for them as well. Now, graph is not something that we often think about in a lot of our relational models. We only have a small amount of relationships because they become hard to query for after a while, and whereas a graph database is designed to make that simpler. But I think that's key. I did see a question pop up before around how, products are good, but data is siloed. So maybe we can just spend a few moments to think about the data silos that we've seen elsewhere, and the challenges that poses, and other solutions to fixing that.
Yeah, it's quite hard with data silos, isn't it? Because it's like, do people even know that they've got data where they shouldn't have it? And then, but then it's when you start, I go in and we talk about like data strategy with customers, and then you start to, well, do you have any data silos? No, we don't have any data silos. And then you start talking, oh yes, and we use this application here, and then, oh yes, and we're using this other application here, and it just goes on. So to provide any of that sort of like innovation that we're looking for with that, you really need to know where all those different bits and how they interlink. And then is that data actually used? How does it feed into sort of any sort of like business stuff we're going forwards with? And then could that go into like our pipelines going forward to produce our sort of reports and things like that? And you're finding that when they're building like the Power BI reports, aren't they? They're building them on various different sets, which you've got completely missed answers, haven't you, from that side?
Yeah. I mean, it happens, I think, most of the time when we talk to clients, that's the first thing we ask them, like where their data is, because most of the time it's like some data is in cloud, some is on premises, then some Excel files are going on, and they really want us to bring everything together and create a report out of it, right? So I think that engineering part of the data is the biggest challenge that's always there in a project cycle before we get some output in the form of a story or insight. So I definitely agree. That's the part where we literally spend 80% of our time, because that's the analytics bit and engineering bits we do a lot.
And I think one of the luxuries that we've got is that you can automate most of Azure, right? So
exactly, yeah.
Data automation, right, has never been easier now, whether or not you're using SQL or you've got a data lake centric model. But you, especially with Power BI, right, where you map all of your sources, right, you cannot get away from Excel. Right, and then you have a reliance on a customer just to drop that Excel file like once a month or something into a blob storage account. And that's where the failure happens, because you don't have the automation, right? Analyst hasn't copied it. A manual process was set, and it's also not in your control as well.
And most of the time they go wrong with the data structure. Like last month, my file had 10 columns or 20 columns. This time it suddenly new columns appeared,
that's
or
right.
something different, right? So that's the biggest thing that needs to be handled. So
we've got a question about Azure Arc. Have either of you done anything on Azure Arc?
I was on the early previews. It looked really promising, and I've got to be honest with you, right? Really struggling to find a use case, because we go around everywhere saying to all of our customers, don't do anything on-prem, right? And eventually what we want to do is we want to take all of those hybrid sources off. So, I mean, it's great that Microsoft have got this capability that we can take an equivalent part of Azure and go, you can have this, right? And you can have the programmable model. But the reality is we're trying to get customers off of that, right? We don't want them to have SAP, like generating large amounts of SAP data on-prem and then be responsible for this really complicated pipeline to get all these entities out, right? We want to shift that away and make that a cloud data producer. So I think really need to think about this use case.
Right.
Oh,
so, yeah,
another one.
Question here.
Fast.
Looking at the list of technologies that make up the intelligent data platform, announced yesterday. So
yes,
I can't see the Azure Data Factory.
we asked for that, didn't we?
yes.
Yeah. Is it applicable in this area, or does it serve a slightly different use case? than the intelligent platform?
That I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think had the answer.
Shout to heckle that
in the front. Yeah,
Heckle.
you can shout, and the mic might pick up some of the audio, but exactly, it's in Synapse pipelines now. So anybody that's put the two ADF and Synapse pipelines together is told that they're not the same.
They're not the same.
If you look at the the Synapse tab, you can see the addition of the Synapse activities, but you know, ADF now is really a thing of the past, isn't it? You know, it's having that level of integration into one tool is where all the power comes from, and it goes back to that initial question of the power of a single framework.
Yeah, so we've got another question. Can you combine IoT products from different vendors? Is this where things should be heading?
That's a good question. So Microsoft's IoT offerings are pretty industry standard and generic, and operate on like low-level protocols that are pretty common across the industry, whether it's for relatively capable devices taking messages over AMQP, or less capable devices sending information over MQTT. The brokerage of those messages on the IoT hub and the device provisioning service allows us to onboard a huge number of services and huge number of devices onto Azure. There's also a lot of services out there that are so-called plug and play, IoT plug and play ready, that you can just kind of buy off a shelf and then plug it on the wall, turn it on, give it some network connectivity, and it will just go and register with an endpoint. You can get them pre-configured, you get the manufacturer to pre-configure these, and they'll effectively connect to your IoT hub and just start sending telemetry. When it comes to the more software services from different vendors, I think that the way that the platform is working is that things like digital twins and things like the IoT Central don't really integrate so much with other leading partners out there, and Microsoft have not necessarily trying to replace those things, but they're definitely building out like an operator-oriented model. And then for analytics, the story is really to feed that into the more modern data warehouse, and kind of use like the lakes and things like Synapse and those types of tools in conjunction maybe with digital twins to give a description of space. But rather than bringing whole enterprise apps onto Azure to do the IoT stuff, instead it's kind of build it there. That's kind of what I see anyway. And I think just one last thing on that as well that I didn't mention before, ADT integrates with a load of other services on Azure, and just to sort of combine with Richard's point, Azure Data Explorer and Azure Digital Twins work really well together. You can query between those natively inside the language, so that you can say, I want to go and get the historic telemetry for this room, but I'm in a historic telemetry system. I'm in Azure Data Explorer. I'm not on the Digital Twin. Digital Twin stores the current state of temperature, not all the history. But all the history flows out across to Azure Data Explorer, and from there you can say, hey, I'm looking at the history, but I also still want to know what room that sensor's in. You can go and query back onto the graph. So there is a tight integration between that graph and the analytical side of Data Explorer.
So it looks like we have another question that's come in. What's your views on Synapse database template? So that's quite popular at the moment, isn't it? Is this the future of CDM, which never really took off, and the solution of having conformed entities across a business?
Yeah,
That's a great question.
good question.
Fancy answering it?
I'll give it a stab. So I think so my mind has gone blank on the name of the business, but I know that Microsoft bought a business that was working in the field of common data models.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is an absolutely fantastic idea, and we do need that convergence, because everybody's wasting so much time to do transformations, to get things into different formats. For some of the work that I've been doing recently around sustainability, we desperately need this, right? There are too many standards bodies that are populated by different sets of companies that have got different ideas over what you should have. And so standards tend to fragment. And the problem that I see occurring is that most businesses, especially the larger ones, end up having no choice but to support them all. So I think even as an act of collusion, right, with Synapse database templates, which are very, very recent tool, fantastic tool. There's some great quick starts that you can that Microsoft have provided that you can just go through the starter screens to try out. I think at least the direction, right, is exactly where we need to be heading, because otherwise, there's just too many burnt engineering cycles on the wrong thing.
So have you got any templates that you like to use within Power BI?
Yeah, I mean, like especially, I mean, when we go with like brand specific templates, like especially when you're working for a individual client, then it's always good to have that template, because sometimes a developer starts building a report, but in the end, the same developer doesn't work on it. It's like mostly there are multiple people involved in developing those kind of reports and dashboarding. So I generally prefer going with those standard templates, which are more brand specific to the client we are working, because that's how it works. Because today, how different clients really want their reporting is like they just want it, they can be easily embedded into their website. So, everything needs to be in accordance with their website, their color schemes, their themes, the logos, their font. So it's always good to go with those standard kind of templates. So yeah, we really go with that kind of. So we spend some time in actually creating those standard templates and then start building the reports on top of it. So that's where it helps while giving that end product to the client with the story.
I have a question for you about how you see the future of Azure Analysis Services and Power BI Premium, and where you might use one over the other.
Good question, but I don't think I'll be able to answer that because I haven't used that much. Anyone else? Rishi, would you like to answer that?
To repeat it.
Mm. Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, this is what it seems to me as well, that that there's been a lot of investment in premium, but not so much investment in analysis services. So I think there's definitely a case for standalone things. I'll give you an example. Recently, we've built a .NET wrapper using ADOMD, and it was very, very easy to use analysis services off the back of that with RLS, because the model was pre-built and we only wanted to do the compute once. But yeah, you should be able to connect the same way. I think all the use cases are actually converging to Power BI Premium, but yeah, I guess the trigger is that I haven't seen much investment in analysis services.
But Richard, I mean, obviously, going back to your question, like, do you really have that use case? That's why you asked that comparison, or is it like?
I guess it's it's very, very difficult sometimes to try and preempt Microsoft roadmaps, because I think that different product teams have sort of different bursts of movements at different times. So just from my perspective, just one of curiosity, because I feel like you can tell when things are accelerating in one direction and slowing down in another, and that was an observation. So.
Cool. I think we're just about out of time now. So we want to sort of thank you very much for attending our session and asking any questions. It's been great fun being up here. Obviously, we've got just a smaller set of the full set of technologies, but yeah, so thank you very much from all of us, and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.